is how many of you drummers and non-drummers know who Mel Lewis was? Anybody know? Anybody hear of that name? Okay, Mel Lewis. Do you know what he did? Okay, Mel Lewis was a very famous jazz drummer. He was one of the people who was very important in my life. And he had a big band with a trumpet player named Thad Jones. Thad Jones was the brother of Elvin Jones, a great drummer. They had a big band in New York that played every Monday at the Village Vanguard for 20 years. And it was a legendary big band. And he was a drummer who had a very big knowledge of styles. Anyway, before he passed away in 1991, he did a series of interviews with a gentleman in New York named Warren Schoenberg, who now runs the Jazz Museum in Harlem. And Warren used to have a radio show in New York at WKCR. And in 1989, Mel came in for eight different days and did a 3-hour radio show on the history of jazz drumming. And Mel picked the drummers that were important in his life. And he was a multi-Grammy winning artist. So what he did is he picked the recordings that he liked and the drummers that he liked, and he kind of talks about them. There's 105 selections that he listens to, and it starts with the early jazz drumming and it goes up through modern jazz drumming. And all of these interviews are available online for free. If you go to the Percussive Arts Society, PAS.org, Mel Lewis interviews, you'll find 20 hours of Mel listening to jazz drummers and talking about it all. So if you're interested in knowing the history of this music, that's the first thing I would point you to, is go to PAS.org, Mel Lewis interviews. The very first, there obviously were many drummers in history. The thing that changed and started jazz drumming was an invention which took place in 1910, which was the invention of the bass drum pedal, which is what's on this thing. And basically, for those people who aren't drummers who never really took a look at it, it's virtually the same invention that was patented in the early 1900s. It's a spring and a pedal. And there have been variations, but not much. This is kind of what it was. And before this, you had a bass drummer and a snare drummer, but no drum set. So until this came along, we didn't have modern drumming. So modern drumming started around 1910. I mean, there's historians who've done more work about it, but that's as far as I know what it is. The first jazz recording was done in 1917. So before 1917, we don't know, we kind of know what drummers sound like, but there's no recordings. So we start with the history of drumming in 1917. The first drummer that Mel Lewis listens to in his analysis is a drummer named Warren "Baby" Dodds. And he was a drummer who played with Louis Armstrong and a bunch of other people. But he's known as kind of the father of modern jazz drumming. Warren "Baby" Dodds. If you listen to those interviews, the first drummer he analyzes is Baby Dodds. And there's one video that exists of Baby Dodds, and it's also online. And it's Baby Dodds playing T for 2 on floor tom-tom with his foot. With the piano player, he's going da 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 da, and he's going boogie 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 boogie. And that's the only video that exists of this guy. That's the very first Warren Baby Dodds. And we go up through the beginning of jazz, really, and ragtime into the early Dixieland playing and different drummers and the ways that they played. And you can kind of hear, especially in Baby Dodds playing, and there are a lot of recordings of his playing, that the drummers used a lot of sounds in the drum set, which they called traps, which were cowbells and woodblocks. And in the early days, the drummers played the rings a lot, as a woodblock. And the drums in the beginning had pearl, just like these do. And the drummers, I remember reading about that, if you hit the pearl, it sounds different than the rings, so you get different sounds. It's kind of a tap dancing thing. And that's where the term trap set came from, is drummers using traps. And you can hear in those early recordings a lot of these basic ideas that the drummers did, kind of almost out of the tap dance, percussion, woodblocky kind of sound. The rhythm that we know is the basic swing rhythm. I'm sure you non-drummers have heard that. That was kind of the basis of the playing we did today. I was always wondering growing up, where did that even come from? And where did that start? And as far as I can figure out, before the bass drum pedal, we had snare drum and bass drum, and the timekeeping before cymbals were really used was on the snare drum. And a march, when swing music evolved, it slowed it down and made it. Press roll is kind of like the backbeat. You open up the roll. That's where the cymbal is. It's basically a snare drum moved to the cymbal for the timekeeping effect became. And the early jazz drummers pretty much kept a very strict rhythm. And then we had the big band era that came along in the 30s, where Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, those stylists, and then the bebop era in the 40s that developed out of the big band era, and to the modern jazz that we have today, and the inclusion of rock and roll and fusion, we went to jazz music. So basically, all of this stuff is covered by Mel Lewis, and that is the best lesson I can give you. So listen to that website; it's free. Although after Mel passed away, Lauren actually we're friends. I actually used to play in Lauren's band, and since I studied with Mel, he gave me all of the tapes, and we tried to actually sell them kind of like an instructional package. But in those days, you had to pay royalties, not like today, when you put things out into the public. And because there's 105 songs, you had to actually pay the writers of the song and the mechanical publishing rights of the publishers of those songs. And since he listened to 105 different songs, it was you couldn't pay the companies enough money to even justify putting out an instruction book. So 20-something years later, now it's on the internet for free. So that's what we've come to. So that's it. That's the first thing. Any questions for us? Those of you who heard this thing today, what are some things you're thinking about?
In a situation like this, especially you and the bass player, you have music. I know she had some written music, but how much counting do you actually do during something like this? Zero? Or
how much what?
Counting.
How much counting?
Any counting? Or, I mean, you have to cue off the keyboard player, obviously. But,
and you're a bass player, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Jamie. If everybody ever met Jamie, you can talk about that too.
Well, I mean, they came in with a very wide variety of, some of them were very arranged, some of them were so unarranged there wasn't even a leash. Just play this song.
Yeah.
So in all places in between. So, the ones that had a very specific written part, obviously I have to count or read the music.
Right.
Otherwise, I wasn't worried about it so much except I'm not real comfortable playing with 7, so I was really relying on my friend here and counting my counting chops. Count 7.
Yeah, 7. I mean, we all have little tricks that we use. For example, 7 to me is 4 and 3.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 3 typically for me is 2 dotted quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, ding, 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 and I get that from a famous Brazilian drummer named Ayrton Moreira. Ayrton was the first real percussionist drummer who came to America in the 60s and played with Miles Davis, but also played amazing, and still does, jazz drums. And I heard him on a recording that many of us may have heard called Light as a Feather, and another one, Return to Forever, the first Return to Forever Chick Corea album. He played drums on that. And he also played percussion with Miles Davis on the live at the Fillmore East period. So I was aware of him, but I heard his drumming that changed my life basically. And for those of you that know about this, I used to play with Pat Metheny, the guitar player who's still out there playing. I was in his band for 6 years, 7 years. And Ayrton was a big influence on me. And after I was in Pat's group, I actually got to tour with Ayrton for about a year. And I helped him with the drum book, and it was really just so I could learn. I could learn what I was doing. And he played jing chicka jing chicka boom chicka boom chicka. That was kind of his thing. And the thing about your question that comes to mind is something I work with myself and also the drummers, is sometimes when we all play, the drummers play, I feel like the time flies away a bit. Like, if you're thinking subdivision, if you go and it rushes, it's ahead, it means that we're not grounded in the tempo, in the deep pocket of the music. So I'm trying my whole life and still trying to really just focus on the time subdivision and Whatever I play has to have that subdivision. I could go ding, and I've got to feel right from the count off of the tune. And sometimes, I mean, I tend to push the edges of it. And one of the things that I've had so much fun doing the last 10 years, my wife and I play in a cover band with the actor Gary Sinise. I don't know if you know who that is. He's Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump. We're in the Lieutenant Dan band. And Gary, of all crazy things, this famous, world-famous actor who's nominated for Academy Award, plays the bass, and he's very good. He's got better time than I do. I know it sounds weird, but he really is grounded. I'm like all over the place. I'm a jazz drummer trying to do all kinds of fancy stuff, but he's just like, come on, I'll play. And so I get to play pop music. It's a cover band. We play for the troops. We raise a lot of money for wounded soldiers, and we help build homes for triple and quadruple amputees, and we play in hospitals. It's probably one of the most amazing things I've ever done. Plus, I get to do it with my wife, which is great. But it's a very hard gig for me because it requires really subdividing a lot. For example, 2 weeks ago, we played a concert in an airplane hangar at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport for 8,000 people in this thing. There was a plane in the hangar, and we're playing this thing, and Christopher Cross was the special guest that we got to play with. And I don't know if you know Christopher Cross, but he had sailing and Ride Like the Wind. So, you know, they send us MP3s and tracks, so I go learn the thing, and I found online 2 or 3 different versions. One was with Steve Gadd on the video, laying way back, and sounded like it was kind of behind the beat, and then another drummer who was playing it, So I just kind of went into the rehearsal thinking, okay, let me just play and see what happens. And it rushed, it picked up. And Christopher Cross, in a very nice way, said, did you feel like it was picking up a little bit? And Gary rolls his eyes because he knows it's coming. So, and I said, well, what tempo? So I saw a gig that Duffy Jackson did, and he was asking, as a joke, he said to the leader, what tempo would you like us to eventually end up? But so, you know, I just said to Christopher Cross, what tempo do you? And he said, well, we like to start it at 122. I didn't have a metronome in my phone, but I wasn't really going to play with it. So I went to try to ground myself in time, because that's 120. So I had to start the tune. All right, everybody, thanks for coming. And I'm thinking, and the section in the middle of the song goes, and I've got such a long way to go. So I think that Michael McDonald sang. And it's in double time and half time. So the song is going, got such a long way to go, such a long way. And the second time, it's half time. Got such a long, and that's easy to pick up. If you're not grounded in the and I purposely laid it way back so that I wouldn't rush. And I'm playing, got such a long way to go, da 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 da. I'm thinking this in my head the whole time. He liked it, we played great, it was cool. But you know, that's, to answer your question, a lot of times, with this, I found myself, you know, it's a contest, we're playing, it's new. There's a nervous energy, which is good, but everybody gets excited, and myself included. But that's the counting that we had to do for that. You know? But it's an issue all the time. When I hear drummers solo in lessons, and they rush, things are ahead. So I'm trying to get everybody to just really focus on the time and feel it, and feel the subdivisions and be as deep in the music as you can. And it seems like that is the biggest issue for people playing good, solid time all the time.
You guys did a great job. They're stopping.
I was going to say, not just drummers, but any instrument.
And I personally, you know, I'm a jazz guy. I'm a jazz guy at heart. I'm a really old music person. I'm a jazz guy. But I also like playing pop music because it just brings out a different, I just like music, but it brings out a different type of concentration. And that cover band is actually harder than this is. Some people think it's like a no-brainer. It's difficult because there are parts you have to play, there are orchestrations. And I would say that I play a Christopher Cross song just like I play this. I'm listening to little nuances on the hi-hat and little parts and little subdivisions so that I can learn. And for the younger drummers, my advice is to just really listen to the music you like and the great people that play it. A video that just crossed my world 2 days ago was a video of Sonny Rollins playing with Alan Dawson on drums. Do you know this one? I think it is. Where he plays the solo, it's a black and white video.
Yeah.
He goes around the drums like this.
In France, right?
Yes, it's on. Just hit Sonny Rollins, Alan Dawson. There's a drum solo on there that is absolutely like perfection. It's unbelievable. I never saw it until like 2 days ago. And where did we find it? There's a saxophone player named Jeff Coffin who went to North Texas, who lives in Nashville where I live, and he plays with Dave Matthews Band. And he's in a famous rock band. He's a jazz guy, and he has jam sessions at his house every single day when he's home. He invites kids, he invites professionals over, and my stepson who plays drums went there the other day, and he said all that Jeff Coffin did when he heard Scotty, my stepson, play, listen to this, you gotta hear Alan Dawson. So there are things to check out. I showed it to my students, but half of this competition, I was thinking about Alan Dawson and why I haven't spent more time really studying him. Because he was Tony Williams' teacher. Tony Williams, the famous drummer who played with Miles Davis when he was 18, studied with Alan, and you can hear the tone. It sounds like Tony Williams. It sounds like Tony Williams' teacher.
He's got that Root Metal Bible, you ever see that thing?
Yeah, and he does, and there's a book, one of his students, John Ramsey, I just saw it this week, where he transcribed
I
his
have it,
music.
but I can't play it.
This is done by the guy who supplied these drums, and he's a great teacher and musician. So that's another name to know, Alan Dawson, somebody very, very special to check out. So you can tell for me, I'm listening to as much music forever as I possibly can, and sort of integrating it all together. And Alan Dawson is another one, and what I got from him was how deep in the time he sounds. And all of his solos and licks were perfectly metronomically in time. One thing I was just thinking of my last comment about today, we were playing Jitterbug Waltz, and I did something that I'd never in my life done, which is my teacher, Joe Morello, he would play 3/4. Typically, I would play 1, 2, 3.
You were playing 2 and 4 on the high.
Yes, I never
You played the 4. I do that all the time.
I never did it because I've been listening to Dave Brubeck records, and my teacher, when he would play 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, instead of that's how I play typically. Or sonic quarters. Max Roach, older school drummers, would play chick chick or something like that. Joe used to play 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. He'd play a high band 4. And the tempo we did, it felt good. And I tried it. And I was the only one. Well, you know, it's the thing. So that's like the first time I ever in my whole life did it. Because I never played a tune that sounded.
You did a good job.
So that's any last minute drum questions, and then we'll play a little bit.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
Not to blow smoke, but you're so humble about it. I don't know if people really realize who he is. I've listened, when you mentioned Pat Metheny, it was record from the 70s and 80s, that he was one of the guys who changed drumming for drummers. You're in the list of one of those guys. And it's the cymbal playing is what I got from it. And it was like, holy, it's a whole different approach to that music and what you were doing. So, well, you were an important figure in the history of this music for sure.
I love when I listen back to that band, but it's still, I feel like life is still a work in progress. So I think about that, and I think, at that point it was, we were kids. And the big influence for the cymbal thing, it was Tony Williams playing on Maiden Voyage and that kind of playing. Airto with that flat cymbal, Roy Haynes on Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, and Bob Moses, who played with Gary Burton before I did. So I had to study his playing, and at one point, he was using 3 flat cymbals in his drum set. And I was following him around, so my first thought is, I love the sound of that. And when Pat Metheny group started, the flat cymbal, which those of you who haven't seen it, it's a cymbal that doesn't have a bell on it. And that was the sound that was in that group, and it just it allows you to play a certain way. It's really real tick, 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 stick sound. And also you can hit it hard, it doesn't go, so you can, so that flat cymbal in that Pat Metheny group coming from those drummers allowed me to kind of experiment and sort of play some of those in the middle. So here it is, 40 years later. This is a new version that I'm still trying to get the guys at Zildjian to make the one that I really hear, and it's almost the one. But thanks for saying that. Yeah, that was a great period of my life.
You know, I'd like to just add one thing. I think especially for any musician at any level, but especially guys that are just starting out, but if you notice, and here's Danny and everyone that's standing up here is an academic professional. They've been in the career for 40, 30 years or however long. And we're still checking out music on a regular basis. There's no easy route to learning the style of this music. There's no like magic book that when you read, you just say, this is how you make it feel like this. It really is, listening is probably the most crucial part to developing the ear, the sensibility for playing this style of music, especially in the drum chair, any chair really. So whenever young students are like, what should I do? How do I get this feel? How do I capture this? Listen, everybody that he's talking about, you should be immersing yourself in the history of the music, the style of the music, to really associate yourself with not only where it started to where it is today, but then finding these kind of hidden gems that even at this point in our career, we find ourselves going, well, that's something new, or wow, let me try that, or it inspires him to play a way that he's never played before, which wouldn't necessarily, hit you guys and you would notice, but to him, that's something very new. And so here you are so far into a career and trying new things on a stage, that's to me the most important thing is really immerse yourself in the music, and it's so accessible now with computer, YouTube, and all this kind of stuff. That to me is the key, is the listening thing. Never stop listening. I've been shuttling the Drudges, being the two guys back and forth to the hotel. We have XM radio and XM jazz and 89.5 on in the evenings. And we find ourselves in the middle of a conversation talking about things, and then all of a sudden someone will just be like, you'll hear something, whether it's a recording we're familiar with, an old Miles recording or something new. And it's just, the ears are always on. So I think really that's to me the key. And then all of a sudden you start to hear that when you're playing, and there's this transfer of information from up here and here to here, and that's like that epiphany moment, and then you can't get enough. So I just think, you were doing that the other day with that video. I'm gonna go check that video out now, because if he's checking it out, I should be checking it out.
One last thing about for drum things. My main technical teacher is a very famous drum fellow. He had a system of natural body movement where you don't have a lot of tension when you play. I hold the stick with no tension in my hand at all. It's a very natural way. And most drummers kind of raise the stick and hit down. When I practice, I start at a distance from the drum and let the stick bounce back. It's kind of almost like a piano key where it bounces back. So when I want to play soft, I start low. When I play loud, I start high. It's like a ball bouncing. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. It's a very easy way to play. You just have no tension. I can control it. I want to raise it higher. So you can tell it's a very relaxing way. But if you're interested in that technique, there's some nice videos online for free. Joe Morello, Natural Body. Up on having it as a student, being yelled at. He talks about that stuff, and you can always write me up at UNF if you want further information. But it's a very thought out way of playing. There's a book called Stick Controlling, which is the #1 drum book in history. And that was written by George Lawrence Stone, and George Lawrence Stone was my teacher's teacher. So I'm coming out of the school. It's not really written down how the technique works, but that's the method book. And it's just a way of playing with no tension. When you need to play louder, you raise the stick higher, it comes from the shoulder, which is why my wife wants to kill me on the Gary Sinise because I play so loud. I can play back. And sometimes I let it go away. But I've been dying to play with Christian, and also Pear is one of my best friends, one of the great piano players who both of these gentlemen, I want to thank them for being involved in this event, as well as everybody else. Thanks for bringing it to me and everybody else. And thanks for going for it. It's a great event. I'm so proud to be part of it. Doug, thank you for supplying the drum set. And
Thank you, Doug.
we had a great time.
There's a question.
Just like cookies.
Question.
Oh, question, one more question? Yeah.
Yeah, quick question for you. I know you only speak for yourself, but my question is about drum solos in a combo setting. Okay, let's say you're at a jam session or performing, and then you take a drum solo. Do you feel like the role of that is for the drummer to really be on a pedestal and show off what they can do, or do you prefer the other musicians to almost comp you and have a little in the background adding things? What do you envision other musicians doing during a drum solo?
Well, that's a good question. You know,
Get
I
it
think-
over with as quick as possible.
Not another drum solo.
I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, because it's a question that we talk about in lessons for what's the purpose of it? What are you trying to do? And I really think my number one answer would be we're performing. You know, if you're playing in front of an audience, I mean, I played gigs fairly recently where, and I'm sorry to say, it's just meandering stuff. If you go and play and it's just a long solo, I can't even understand what we're doing, let alone an audience. So, you know, you kind of want, you know, I listened back to some of these historic videos, and there's a video that Rich Madison played on, Dizzy Gillespie. Well, he's introducing his band, and it's an audio tape, but he says, we're gonna feature the best player in the band, and he's saying, no, not you, not you, not you. You. And it's the baritone saxophone player. And he comes out and he plays one little ba-da, and then he goes away. And then he comes back at every chorus, and then it becomes a joke. So there's a fun and a beauty in it, and you can hear the audience going nuts. So it's really like a communication to the audience. So the drum solo, if it's a jam session where there's nobody there, most people use it as a chance to practice. And I don't like doing it. I try to make the best music under every circumstance I possibly can ever. So what I try to do is I try to play to the point, make a statement, play musically, fairly short and compact. And you know, if you want to try things, it's fun to experiment. But I usually, my feeling, I don't know how everybody feels with solo, the music comes first, period. I play for the song, and I play for how the music feels, and at least that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm never thinking of showing off, or never thinking of, hey, everybody, check this out. I mean, there's a tendency for drummers, you know, do a little of it. But the main thing is, I want it to sound what I think the great solos sound. At least try. And you know, that's the level. Elvin, Tony, Jack, Mel Lewis, Joe Morello, Roy Hayes, Philly Joe, Jimmy Cobb, high-level jazz drummers. Art Blakey. You know, they're all great. Roy Haynes, who sounds unbelievable. What is he, almost 90?
I had him send me a picture of him. I can't believe what he looks like.
Yeah, it looks great. So, you know, because I grew up with heavyweight people in my life. I had Joe Morello as a teacher at 16, who was on the first jazz gold recording playing Take 5, these legendary solos. And, you know, you grow up with that, it's sort of, you know, there's a respect factor of what that is. That stays with you your whole life. You know? At least that was my motivation. It's like looking at Picasso, or listening to Pablo Casals, or you know, any great, amazing artist. And just if you look at it that way. So that's my answer to that. Anybody want to say anything about solos?
Yeah. No, I was just saying before you said about music comes first. And as a piano player, the more I try to practice this as instrument and learn it, you know, I'm more and more look at it as an orchestra. You know, because what I do in my jazz group, well, I got to, you know, orchestrate here. I improvise, but orchestrate. So, you know, for me, I'm perfectly happy with comping for you know, whole tune. I don't need the solo and everything, because if my role is to comp and support, and that's the, you know, best role for the moment, I'm happy to do it. So, you know, and with drums, you know, yeah, like the music always comes. Comes first. Whatever is going to happen in the groove, that's going to make it the best possible performance. That's what we do. But that's what I strive to do.
I mean, that being said, drums, there are drummers who really have a powerful, have a powerful, almost dynamic showbiz thing about drumming, where the drummer just plays these spectacular drum solos. And that, you know, gets an audience going, and it does serve the music, but there's definitely that kind of virtuistic thing, you know. Billy Cobham, or you know, some of the other drum, Jack, even Elvin, I mean, had such a kind of a powerhouse thing. And I've been more of a more subtle, and then I just get geared, I'm geared to more subtle type of playing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just the last part of my question was, as a drummer, do you like the other musicians that come in under you and support you during the solo, whether you add a bass note here or...
Oh, I mean to play along. I missed that part. I'm sorry. I do. I like playing over vamps. In fact, even one of the kids took a transfer on take 5, and he played over bones. It's fun having that stuff to play.
I think for me, I'm always, especially, the jam session is one thing, and you're very right. Sometimes it sounds like guys that have been shedding, or practicing, shedding is the musician term for it, whatever. It's they get up there and practice, and you get that very typical melody, piano, bass solo, drum solo, melody solo. It's like this cycle. Well, I don't know who invented that. It's what happens musically. What happened in the song before? Was it a ballad? Did that guy take the first solo? Maybe the bass player takes the first solo. That changes the whole dynamic of the song. And then the next tune is an up tune, and maybe it starts with the drums, and he's opening it up, and that's where the time is. And then maybe there's no drum solo because that's how the tune started. So when I think of a set, or I think of a performance, I'm thinking about overall song composition. Just because we're playing jazz doesn't mean that every guy in the band has to play a solo. That's not what that means, and it doesn't have to go in the same order. But when I think the drums can be featured, like some of my favorite, like where I love the drums to come is like in a vamp section at the end of the tune, like where it'll build it up and then it just lands, opposed to maybe in the middle of the tune because especially if the band drops out and it's just a drum solo, you can lose certain momentum. It just depends on who it is and what's going on in the tune. But if you think about each song compositionally, like what is best for the entire song, not necessarily you as an individual or as individual pieces of the band, but the entire point of playing music as a band, which is the song. I think that, for me, dictates how you support certain elements within the band that are soloing, whether, does that make sense? So if the song before had this kind of comping background, then maybe you would try the walking thing, you could try different things. What I try to always get away from is like that round robin, trade fours, it's just this thing, it starts to feel like a jam session. Whenever you have a gig, and it's a bona fide gig, get away from that typical jam session thing. Really try to make them compositions. And I think that will help you make the musical decision whether you back something out or let them on a pedestal.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Danny, you're a great artist. Let me ask you, when you take a fill, are you counting in your head, or are you holding the pulse on one of the other drums or the hi-hat?
Trying to count, just count the whole time pretty much. Not like 1, 2, if it's 7 maybe.
Right.
No, I'm just trying to feel that, like we were talking about, just feeling the time of doing the fill. Just trying to make the whole thing relax. But it even happens when I'm not playing that much. If I'm playing a ballad, and I've got to go ding, ding, da 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 da. So if I was playing a fill, da or go da da da. I'm still feeling not where it's hitting you over the head, but it becomes very. The idea is to get into the tune where you're really feeling the pulse naturally, where your whole body just kind of reacts to it.
You always know where one is, right?
With me, you're never sure. Most of the time.
Yeah, getting back to this question too, I think like the difference like in trading fours and trading a particular amount of bars versus choruses. When I look at it as a conversation. I try to have who's ever before me or after me or whatever, I try to have a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
And then over choruses, I try my hardest to play like a saxophone player would, and I want the audience to know what tune it is.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to sit there and sing the melody while I'm playing my solo. And I don't have to, do much of anything. But I want people to be aware of what tune it is while I'm playing.
Yeah, in fact, that's a point. A couple of kids have come to school where they think jazz is you just sort of play. I had one student who had a great ding-a-ding-ding-a-ding, could really play time, but he didn't know what 12-bar blues was. He thought you just sort of play. You didn't know that you're playing from the melody of the song and that there's a structure that really has a whole song. So it can be.
Take the Elvis songs. Originally, I used to think he was just playing. It's like, I would really listen.
Yeah.
This was many years ago. And sure enough, playing over those tunes,
You
and
can
that
find-
easy too. You can
find
right on
parents.
the line. It's like,
Yes.
what do you do?
Could we get everyone to play?
Sure. In fact, I wanted to end it with us
Yeah,
playing.
yeah.
I'm dying to do this.
All right.
Thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed this.
Seven. Thank you.